France too good for Japan, folks, in the Autumn Nation series from the Stade de France. 52 points to 12. Pretty emphatic from the French. Their kicking game was lethal. The Japanese backfield struggled. I mean, they ran a whole bunch of carries at the French defensive line. A lot of times it wasn't getting very far. But they did score a couple of tries in the second half. They at least kept fighting. For the French, the main work on, you would say, would be their discipline. They conceded a whole heap of penalties, and if their breakdown work is the same against the All Blacks in their next game, it could be a costly one. But we'll go through the key events and the stats, and you guys can let us know what your thoughts are on France's ultimately pretty cruisy win over the French. They did have a little bit of a scare early when Warner Durns, who's definitely a guy to watch out for in that Japanese side, charged down a Dupont box kick. So he went close from the charge down, but not to be. And then it didn't take long for the French to get on the scoreboard. Louis Bielbiaré, he is proper lightning quick. And his use of the boot, along with the other players, was causing absolute problems for the Japanese backfield. This time he got Tuitama, who's the guy a little bit out of position at fullback. He doesn't usually play fullback. He's usually a winger. Bielbiaré on the left wing. After they'd gone down the right wing through Atisogbe, so really playing with some width, the French guys. But Bielbiaré with the grubber kick chases it, and Tuitama is not able to gather it, so Bielbiaré is able to go over 5 points to 0 early. France get a second one only a few minutes later. It's again turnover ball, 9 phases. You got Aldrit in the mix, you got Bielbiaré in off his wing, and there's a cross kick to Gaetan. He's got so much time, able to go over easy as you like. This time it is converted, 12 points to 0. And then just soft Japanese mistakes, man, like kicking it out on the full. Soft penalties conceded. At least their defense was able to hold. Like the first 2 French attacks pretty much directly just resulted in tries. But the third and I think fourth waves of French attacks were at least held. They did eventually get another one. Again, it's a kick from Bielbiaré. More problems for Tuitama, and this time it is Roumat who was able to go over for the try on 19 minutes. The TMO had to check that one, but it was given. The TMO was more active in this game than I think all of the other games this weekend thus far combined. Probably had a lot of tries to chalk off and confirm and whatnot. That man again, Bielbiaré, is able to get his second one of the game. He was hunting a hat-trick for the rest of the game, but didn't get it. But on 28 minutes, it's from a cross kick from Ramos. He plays a nice 1-2 of Moefana, and he's got the gas and the stutter step to go over. 26-0. And then the Japanese, again, when they got the ball, their attack is going up the guts and struggling to make any inroads on the French defense. It would often result in something of a nothing kick, which is a little bit troubling. They did show a bit more in the second half that their attack can click, but in the first half, it was not getting far at all. The French, though, as I said, would keep making penalties, giving away penalties, which was costly. But then, Japan would do things like lose lineouts. They lost a lineout on 33, which directly led to a they lost their lineout, which directly went into touch. So it meant it was a French lineout. From that French lineout, Malvaka the hooker, Dupont the halfback, play a little 1-2, move down the sideline. And that one's a try through Malvaka on 34. So it is just getting from bad to worse for the French guys. They're down 31-0. Japan looked to have scored right before halftime, but that one was chalked off. The tight head prop, Takeuchi, was just like bugger it from a penalty conceded by the French. He just tapped it and went because they were getting nowhere. So he at least tried to play quick. It looked like they had scored from that break a few phases later, but there was a knock-on in the build-up. So chalked off. Sadly for the Japanese guys. But yeah, first half finishes 31-0. Japan will be frustrated with just the errors, man. When France would give away a penalty, it's your chance. Lose the line out or kick. One kick didn't make touch right before halftime. It's just really kind of head in your hands stuff. France had about even territory, but they had slightly less possession because the Japanese guys were doing a lot of ball in hand. France had kicked 24 times in the first half alone, which is more than some teams kicking an entire game. So the kicking game was really, causing problems for the Japanese. The Japanese had 12 turnovers conceded, which again can be a whole total for a game, but it's one half of rugby. Too much. Second half, France continued to go through some phases. Dupont picking out the forwards. Then he puts Gros into a gap on 42, so that's another try for the French, 38-0. Then another TMO intervention chalks off a try. This one would have been Dupont, so both sides have had one chalked off. 49 minutes, the best play of the game from Japan, maybe one of the tries of the game, because there's confidence, like you're 38-0 down. I guess you got nothing to lose, but from their own half, they run it out. Riley with the nice offload to Nakabulo, who's able to get a pretty sweet break. The hands from the backs, and Tatakawa, the veteran, the captain, who injures himself doing it, but he's able to go over just barely as Dupont is trying to tackle him. But try scored, try given, 38-7. The Japanese are at least on the board, but the momentum didn't last long. France had a big scrum not long later. Dupont with a big line break. And carries from the forwards like Colombe, like just the big units getting forward, and Boudin is able to finish off. So 45-7. Again, just to focus a little bit on the negative for the French. I don't mean to be that guy, but they did get themselves a yellow card warning, which you are like 45-7 up. How are you getting yellow card warnings? That's how bad the infringements were. Too many penalties conceded. They had like 4 in a row at one point. Japan went for a maul. That man Tatafu, who does get on the board in a minute, goes over, but he's held up. I think it's Atisogbe who gets under him, so good work from the French, but a desperation on defense. But then a minute later, Jalibert throws an intercept pass to Tatafu. It's one of those ones where it's one-handed. If he doesn't get it, he's in big trouble. The one thing I don't like about that law is the result decides the outcome. I don't know, is that a normal thing in sports? There's probably examples of both ways. But anyway, one-handed, batted it, goes in the air, he's able to catch it, tears down the left wing. Bielbiaré is able to catch him, but not able to stop him. Tackles him, but it's still close enough to the line that he's able to just dot it down. So 45-12. He missed out on one try, but he gets it a minute later anyway. So that's the final scoring for the Japanese. But at least they kept fighting. France didn't want to have them have the kind of last try wins say, though. France did have one more try in them. I mean, Dupont cross-kicked to Molvaca. That's just this French side, like the halfbacks cross-kicking to the hooker who can play loose forward as well. Bielbiaré went close for his hat-trick try, but it was Boudin who goes over for his second on 65 minutes, so 52-12. There's still a lot of game to go, but it gets a bit scrappy. It's a bit messy from both sides. Japan, to be fair, kept playing, but couldn't get anything out of the French defence at the end. So, yeah, it's a pretty good win from the French, you'd have to say. Is that the best preparation for the All Blacks next week? That's a question the commentators were asking. I'm not sure. They certainly will need to highlight the breakdown work. Like, it's one thing to give away all the penalties at the breakdown if you're on a different page from where the referee is at, but you need to adapt, and they didn't seem to adapt quickly enough for mine. So that's definitely a big work on, but man, that they showed that the kicking game and overall skill set is lethal if you give them any space. Bielbiaré had 4 line breaks, had 123 metres, had 2 tries, would have liked another. He bombed at least one big line break move where they seemed to have the Japanese defence cut to pieces, but the scramble got in the way of his final pass. Tuitama had over 200 metres at the back and 20 carries for the Japanese because he was fielding a lot of kicks at the back. Dupont had 93 metres, 8 defenders beaten, set up 2 tries. Not a bad return from him, but just Dupont doing normal Dupont stuff. Dylan Riley beat 7 defenders for the Japanese in the midfield. But I mean, ultimately, when you got team stats, Japan tackled at 65%. You are not going to win virtually any games with those kind of numbers. The French were in the 80s, the high 80s, which is pleasing. Territory 56-44, so France with their kicking game dominate that area. Position finish is pretty even, but line breaks 13-8 to France, and turnovers conceded 22-13. So Japan, just so many errors. Can't win that way. Again, the penalty count though is costly. 11-6. Where'd I get 8 from? It's not even 8 there. 11-6. So France above 10, and in the context of that game, when you win, when you put 50 points on your opponent, you don't want to be doubled their penalty count almost. So, yeah, interesting one. But, yeah, lots of running rugby. Both sides clocked up a few metres. As I mentioned, France have got New Zealand next, which will be an interesting test. And the Japanese have got Uruguay. So, maybe a slightly easier task than playing France in France. But we'll see how things go. You guys let us know your thoughts. That is the end of my rugby Saturday. Sunday? It's Sunday. Saturday for this game. Sunday for my morning here in New Zealand. There are 2 games on tomorrow. Wales are taking on Fiji. and the Scots are hosting the Box. That will be very interesting. Again, kickoff time is a bit brutal for those of us in this part of the world for a Monday morning, but we'll get them watched. You guys let us know your thoughts on the game. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, if you've enjoyed the reviews over the weekend. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.